Dear all, welcome to our plenary session on bioeconomy strategies around the world. We have 6 eminent speakers who will share their information and wisdom about bioeconomy strategies in specific regions. We will cover Argentina, Latin America, Africa, the United States, Europe, and Germany. We will have questions at the end, so please hold them back until we have finished the presentation, and then we go into the general discussion where you can raise questions to the whole panel or to individuals as you like. And the first speaker I like to invite is Dalia Lewi. She is with the Ministry of Agriculture here in Argentina and one of the experts on the bioeconomy. And I learned last week you received the prize from the bioeconomy, the Broad Bio Prize here in Argentina. So Dalia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Buenos días a todas y a todos en la audiencia. Es un placer estar aquí y poder contarles en pocos slides qué es lo que estamos haciendo en materia de bioeconomía en la Secretaría de Agricultura, Ganadería y Pesca. Comentarles primero que esta Dirección Nacional de Bioeconomía se creó en agosto del 2020, como comentó hoy el secretario Bailo. Si bien previamente había actividades relacionadas con la bioeconomía, no estaba institucionalizada esta situación dentro del ministerio. Así que, bueno, ahora tenemos la Dirección Nacional de Bioeconomía que cuenta con 2 coordinaciones. La coordinación de innovación y biotecnología y la coordinación de bioenergía. Aquí tenemos indicados también cuáles son las áreas que nos competen dentro de la Dirección Nacional. Estas son, por supuesto, la biotecnología agropecuaria, la bioenergía, los bioinsumos de uso agropecuario y los biomateriales. En el caso de la biotecnología, tenemos una Comisión Nacional Asesora de Biotecnología Agropecuaria que funciona desde el año 1991. Ya cursamos más de 30 años de política de Estado ininterrumpida en materia biotecnológica. Respecto a los bioinsumos, existe un comité asesor en bioinsumos de uso agropecuario que se llama CABUA, que también es interinstitucional y formulador de propuestas, políticas, programas y análisis de todo lo referente a los bioinsumos, y COBIOMAT, que es en paralelo lo mismo para biomateriales. Y luego les voy a comentar que la Comisión Nacional Asesora en Bioeconomía se conformó durante la pandemia y ya tiene actividades que ahora les voy a comentar. Como principales objetivos de gestión de esta Dirección Nacional de Bioeconomía, nos propusimos en esta gestión acompañar a los biodesarrollos locales. Tenemos este término del biodesarrollo y como sujeto de acompañamiento a los biodesarrollos locales. Y eso es nuestro principal eje. Y respecto a la bioeconomía, había preexistente un programa de promoción de la bioeconomía que se renovó en 2021 y que proponía generar una Comisión Nacional Asesora, que es la que les comenté antes, que finalmente se conformó, y también tenía el mandato de generar un plan de acción para la bioeconomía para el sector agropecuario. Esta comisión se conformó y también hemos discutido el plan de acción que finalmente se adoptó a fines del año pasado. Y en ese plan de acción acuñamos y adoptamos el concepto de biodesarrollo que les comentaba antes. Y acá lo puse en inglés, pero voy a decirlo en español para que se comprenda bien cuál es este concepto de biodesarrollo, que entendemos que es una estrategia tecnoproductiva basada en un modelo de innovación y prácticas innovadoras basadas en el uso de recursos, procesos y principios biológicos y formas de generación y aplicación de conocimiento para producir alimentos, energía, productos y servicios de una manera sustentable para alcanzar el desarrollo de las comunidades y los territorios, y acá va lo más importante, en los aspectos sociales, productivos y ambientales. Estos conceptos también los mencionó esta mañana el secretario Bailo, y estamos perfectamente alineados con esos conceptos y esas políticas. Tenemos ejes de gestión para formulación de políticas públicas, por supuesto, la bioeconomía, así como fue la biotecnología, una política de Estado, la bioeconomía también lo está haciendo, promover los desarrollos y promover las inversiones en este sentido, promover la incorporación de nuevas tecnologías en todos los ámbitos de nuestra incumbencia, por supuesto, sostener y mejorar el sistema regulatorio, como lo hicimos desde el 91 con la biotecnología, promover la innovación y el desarrollo de diferentes cultivos y sus usos, generar políticas de desarrollo y promover el uso y la aproximación y el uso de nuevas tecnologías. Acá hay un popurrí de algunos desarrollos y biodesarrollos que tenemos en nuestro país, a los que acompañamos en estos últimos años y que seguimos acompañando en la medida que lo requieran y que entendemos que es necesario para el desarrollo de nuestro país. El xenotrasplante, vacunas recombinantes, cultivos que resuelven problemas locales como en el algodón, y bioproductos y bioprocesos de los biomateriales, que también tenemos un desarrollo bastante importante que está generándose. En respecto a bioinsumos y biomateriales, otorgamos un sello de distinción de calidad, se llama el sello Bioproducto Argentino. Este sello distingue a productos de desarrollo local, y todos los años hay una convocatoria para que se acerquen los proyectos y se otorgan estos sellos que tienen que tener calidad, tienen que ser biobasados y tienen que demostrar esa cualidad. Este año, bueno, acaba de cerrarse la convocatoria, el año pasado entregamos 30, este año hay más de 60 presentaciones. Y esto es quizás el eje en donde estamos ahora parados y con más compromiso, trabajando muchísimo en el programa Biodesarrollar. Esto es un programa que actualmente está en convocatoria, lo mencionó también el secretario Bailo. Es para acompañar a los biodesarrollos locales, como dije en un principio, tanto del área de la biotecnología, de la bioenergía, de los bioinsumos, como de los biomateriales, es para poder financiar con aportes no reembolsables a proyectos de estas áreas, pero también hay un beneficio a tasa subsidiada desde el Banco Vice para proyectos del área privada, es decir, tanto sector público como privado como mixto puede presentarse a este programa que está abierto, su convocatoria, ahora hasta el 18 de julio. Y una novedad que surgió esta semana, es una noticia bien fresca, que es la creación del programa Municipios Bioenergéticos. Esto salió ayer exactamente en el boletín oficial, que va a ser un programa para promover el uso de la bioenergía proveniente de distintos tipos de biomasa en las municipalidades de nuestro país. Y un hito también que quería mencionar respecto a la biotecnología y a las evaluaciones de bioseguridad de los productos derivados de la biotecnología moderna, es que hemos firmado un memorándum de entendimiento entre las agencias regulatorias de Argentina y de Brasil en materia biotecnológica. Esto se firmó en octubre del año pasado y como principal objetivo es que los desarrollos que tienen, que han surgido en ambos países tengan una facilitación en las presentaciones de las solicitudes de permiso o en las solicitudes de autorización comercial, para que en la facilitación en el tema de poder hacer un puente de comunicación entre ambas agencias para que esas presentaciones puedan, por ejemplo, hacerse en conjunto, y también para compartir criterios regulatorios, generar una interacción, que más que interacción va a ser una sinergia, en este caso, en materia regulatoria y de bioseguridad para el análisis de los productos derivados de la biotecnología moderna. Ambos países compartimos iguales criterios regulatorios y entendemos que esto va a potenciar el área de la biotecnología en la región. A partir de este memorándum, también estamos negociando con los países del Mercosur, Paraguay y Uruguay, otro memorándum de entendimiento que está pronto para firmarse, así que todavía no podemos dar la noticia de que se firmó, pero está muy pronto y esperemos que eso sea una realidad, porque para el Mercosur y la región va a ser un tema muy importante el poder compartir los criterios regulatorios y poder avanzar en tener desarrollos que puedan llegar al mercado, especialmente los que se van desarrollando en nuestros países. Y para finalizar, compartir como a modo de resumen, que bueno, nosotros estamos acompañando a los desarrollos locales, asesorando a todos los grupos de investigación públicos y privados que necesiten un apoyo técnico para avanzar en su parte regulatoria o alguna otra cuestión que estén requiriendo. Hacemos capacitaciones tanto para entidades públicas como para privadas en materia regulatoria, para que puedan conocer cómo son los procedimientos para presentar las solicitudes, y generamos instrumentos de financiamiento para que puedan tener más oportunidades. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Dalia, for the overview about Argentina. Very nice. May I please ask now Hugo Chavarria, who is the head of the Bioeconomy and Innovation Strategy Plan at ICABR.
Bueno, primero que todo, muy buenos días. Realmente ayer teníamos una reunión con varios representantes, con varias instituciones que venían de América Latina. Yo les decía que realmente uno se siente muy, muy feliz de saber que es casa de esta discusión. Y lo decía el director general ahora al inicio. Nosotros siempre hemos dicho que si la bioeconomía fuera un partido de fútbol, es un partido que nosotros deberíamos jugar de local. No, porque es acá donde nosotros tenemos estas grandes riquezas en biodiversidad, en capital humano. Entonces, bueno, es muy bonito saber que hoy estamos jugando de local. Es realmente muy, muy bonito. Esto fue algo que soñamos hace 3 años, creo que fue la primera vez que hablamos de que el ICABR viniera a Argentina. Nos cayó la pandemia, lo hicimos virtual, y después, bueno, fuimos a Bolonia, y en Bolonia se concretó que Argentina fuera la sede. Entonces, es realmente muy, muy, muy bonito estar acá. Bueno, es súper difícil hacer esta presentación después del keynote de Eduardo. Va muy alineado, me parece que es un correlato a lo que ya Eduardo empezó. Tenemos la ventaja de que estamos diciendo lo mismo y no lo contradigo mucho. Yo voy a hacer un rápido repaso sobre la bioeconomía hoy en América Latina. Eduardo nos contó cómo llega la bioeconomía a la región. Yo hoy les voy a contar un poco cómo estamos hoy, cuál es la fotografía de este momento de la bioeconomía en América Latina, particularmente en la parte de políticas, pero también tocando algunos otros temas. Bueno, lo primero es, ya les contábamos, la semana pasada estuvimos en Hannover, este grupo internacional asesor del Global Bioeconomy Council, en donde estuvo Regina, estuvo Marcelo, que anda por ahí, estuvo mi persona, y esto fue parte de la discusión. Digamos, hay un único, más o menos, digamos, un único entendimiento de bioeconomía, pero hay diferentes construcciones de la bioeconomía. Cada bioeconomía se construye de acuerdo a las capacidades, a los recursos, a las necesidades que tiene cada uno de las regiones, de los países, de los territorios y de las cadenas. Pero hay algunos elementos que aparecen en común. El tema de que evidentemente estamos basados en lo biológico, estamos basados en el recurso y en el principio biológico, de que hay incorporación de ciencia, tecnología e innovación y o conocimientos. Ayer se planteaba la posibilidad también de que no todo fuera ultratech, sino que también hubieran conocimientos ancestrales, conocimientos autóctonos, y que la bioeconomía todo eso lo puede aprovechar. Que evidentemente la bioeconomía tiene que apoyar todos los objetivos de sostenibilidad ambiental y tiene que agregar valor a la mayor escala. Esos elementos aparecen en todas las definiciones de bioeconomía que prácticamente uno repasa alrededor del mundo. ¿Cómo debería ser esa discusión en América Latina? Sin duda debería estar basada en biodiversidad. ¿Por qué debería estar basada en biodiversidad? Porque América Latina es sinónimo de recurso biológico. Nosotros tenemos el 50% de la biodiversidad conocida en todo el mundo, el 50% únicamente en el 15% de la superficie terrestre, únicamente en donde vive el 8% de la población. Nosotros tenemos prácticamente la misma biodiversidad que tiene Asia y África sumada. Nosotros somos el 15% del área cuando ellos llegan a ser el 47% del área y llegan a ser el 78% de la población. Es decir, en términos per cápita, nosotros multiplicamos 7 y 8 veces la biodiversidad que tienen otras regiones del mundo. Entonces, por supuesto que la biodiversidad debería ser la base de nuestra bioeconomía. Tenemos, como decía Eduardo, a 8 de los 15 países más megadiversos, tenemos el 16% de los recursos marinos, el 23% de la cobertura boscosa, todo eso lo tenemos. Pero de nada sirve tenerlo si lastimosamente no lo conocemos y no lo aprovechamos. Únicamente entre el 20 y el 30% de la biodiversidad que tenemos, la tenemos mapeada e identificada. Ayer hablábamos de todos estos temas. Una gran cantidad de la biodiversidad que tenemos hoy todavía no la conocemos. Y si no la conocemos, no sabemos cómo la podemos aprovechar sosteniblemente. Tenemos una enorme biodiversidad, pero las exportaciones agrícolas que estamos haciendo, en su gran mayoría son productos primarios. El 66% de las exportaciones agrícolas que hacemos es puro commodity, no tiene ninguna agregación de valor. Una tercera parte tiene una agregación de valor, pero son agregaciones de valor muy pequeñas. Entonces conocemos poco, agregamos poco valor y perdemos mucho. 15% de lo que producimos, nos hemos preocupado mucho por ser más eficientes en la producción, pero estamos dejando botado el 15% de lo que producimos alrededor de todos los procesos de la cadena. Estos alimentos que nosotros dejamos botados anualmente permitirían alimentar a 30 millones de personas. Y por último, mucho de la biomasa que generamos es considerado residuo. Hoy, bajo nuestro sistema productivo, solamente el 15% del café tiene algún valor de mercado. El resto, y un café, digamos, y un producto tan importante para nuestras economías, el mucílago, la cascarilla, las aguas mieles, todo eso, hoy es contaminación. Hoy es residuo. Hoy tiene un costo de tratamiento para el productor. Igual en la caña de azúcar. El 60% de la biomasa de la caña de azúcar, en la mayoría de las veces, se usa para generar energía, quemándola durante la época de zafra. En la mejor de las veces. Igual en cítricos, igual en la gran mayoría de cultivos. Entonces, claro, tenemos una gran disponibilidad de recurso biológico, pero lo conocemos poco, lo aprovechamos poco y mucho lo desperdiciamos. Una buena noticia es que efectivamente la bioeconomía hoy está posicionada en diferentes ámbitos como un modelo que nos permite tener incrementos en sostenibilidad y eficiencia a lo largo de todo el proceso productivo. Incrementar productividad y eficiencia no solamente en la producción, sino también en la industrialización y aprovechamiento. La bioeconomía nos permite transformar los territorios rurales. ¿Por qué? Como decía Eduardo, porque la biomasa viaja mal. ¿A dónde tienen que realizarse esas nuevas industrias biológicas en el territorio? Si nosotros tratamos de mover esta biomasa, sobre todo la biomasa de residuos, a otros lugares, matamos el modelo de negocio. Entonces tiene que suceder ahí. ¿Qué significa eso? Generación de empleo, generación de ingresos, nuevas oportunidades de desarrollo. Y si además le sumamos que estamos generando bioenergías más accesibles, esas son puertas para el desarrollo. Además, la bioeconomía nos permite hacer un mejor uso del recurso biológico a través de la agregación de valor. Las biorefinerías nos generan industrias multiproducto, que nos diversifican la canasta productiva, nos disminuyen riesgo y nos generan economías de escala alrededor de todo el proceso. La bioeconomía nos permite incrementar la nutrición y la salud a través de la generación de alimentos de mayor cantidad nutricional, de alimentos más variados. Y por último, evidentemente, si estamos hablando de la producción de bioproductos y bioservicios que sustituyen a productos de origen fósil, estamos contribuyendo a la sostenibilidad ambiental. Yo creo que pocos pueden estar en contra de eso. Esto es una discusión que en ciertos ámbitos está relativamente posicionada. Y eso ha hecho, como decía Eduardo, que hoy la bioeconomía sea un proceso en políticas públicas, y ya lo contaba Dalia. Por supuesto que hay países que están apostando a la formulación y a la implementación de políticas públicas. Hoy hay 2 países de América Latina que tienen estrategias de bioeconomía en implementación, Colombia y Costa Rica. Hay otros países que no tienen estrategias nacionales, pero hoy tienen planes estratégicos para bioeconomía en sectores específicos. Bioeconomía en agricultura, bioeconomía en ciencia y tecnología, bioeconomía y biodiversidad. Y hay otros países, hacíamos un recuento hace poco en el programa, hay 17 países que tienen marcos normativos en biotecnología, biocombustibles o bioinsumos. 17 países, somos 34, es decir, al menos la mitad tiene marcos normativos. Entonces, por supuesto que hay un proceso. Hay un proceso en temas de ciencia y tecnología, principalmente a través de los mecanismos regionales, que han hecho esfuerzos importantes, Procinorte, Procisur, Fontagro. Hay un proceso en los negocios de la bioeconomía, liderados evidentemente por el sector productivo, por supuesto que liderados por el sector productivo. Hoy, América Latina tiene a 5 países dentro del top 10 de países con mayor hectareaje dedicado a cultivos genéticamente modificados. El 80% de los commodities de la región están en áreas de cultivos genéticamente modificados. Eso, por supuesto, que es parte del proceso. Inclusive eso empezó en commodities. Hoy se ha trasladado a otros cultivos. Es un proceso, por ejemplo, en el tema de biocombustibles. Hoy la región produce el 31% del bioetanol del mundo y el 19% del biodiesel. En bioinsumos, tuvimos el Foro Panamericano de Bioinsumos hace 6 semanas, 7 semanas. En biocontroladores representa más o menos el 60% del mercado de bioinsumos a nivel mundial. América Latina hoy participa con el 20% del mercado mundial de biocontroladores. Y se espera que en 10 años participe con el 30%. Va a ser la primera región, la región con mayor participación mundial en el mercado de biocontroladores mundiales. Por supuesto que tenemos un rol de liderazgo. Y además, hoy tenemos a una gran cantidad de organismos trabajando de manera convencida en la región, apoyando los esfuerzos de los países. Sin embargo, no es suficiente. El título de esta charla era un proceso, pero que necesitamos meter el acelerador. Necesitamos mayor compromiso. Necesitamos traducir todos esos esfuerzos y buenas intenciones en realmente acciones en el campo. ¿En cuáles campos? En un montón de campos. En sensibilización, en formación de capacidades. Eduardo lo mencionaba, en derechos de propiedad intelectual, en regulaciones y normativas, en promoción de investigación y desarrollo para la bioeconomía, en inversiones para aceleración, escalamiento, en la bioeconomía para la integración y en posicionar a la bioeconomía en los principales espacios, en posicionar a la región en los principales espacios de la bioeconomía mundial, como estos. ¿Por qué? Porque aquí es donde se discute sobre la última frontera de ciencia, tecnología e innovación. Aquí es donde se fomentan los proyectos de colaboración conjunto. Y esto, la verdad es que excede las capacidades de los países y de las instituciones individuales. ¿Cuál es una buena noticia? Ayer habíamos 30 instituciones, que yo decía que ahí estaba el corazón de la bioeconomía de América Latina. Ayer había 30 instituciones acá que todos hicieron el esfuerzo por venir con recursos propios. Estaban realmente todos comprometidos. 30 instituciones que hoy son los que están impulsando, digamos, desde los organismos internacionales, desde los servicios de apoyo, desde lo privado, evidentemente, además de las instituciones públicas. Hoy estuvimos reunidos ayer todo el día. Y ayer se constituyó la Red Latinoamericana de Bioeconomía. ¿Por qué? Porque estamos conscientes de que nadie puede juntos, de que nadie puede solos, de que tenemos que trabajar de manera conjunta, de que estos son esfuerzos que nos suman a todos. Entonces, bueno, este es en resumen, América Latina ha tenido un proceso de muchos años. Eduardo nos contó cómo llega la bioeconomía acá. Hoy tenemos liderazgo en ciertos mercados, en ciertos sectores, pero nos falta meter acelerador. Ayer dimos, me parece a mí, que un paso en el sentido correcto, uniendo esfuerzos, creando sinergias. Y bueno, y estoy seguro que pronto tendremos muy buenas noticias.
Thank you, Hugo, for a nice introduction about the bioeconomy development in general in Latin America, and that more commitments are needed. And I think it fits very nice to what Dalia has said, but also what Eduardo Trigo this morning has mentioned, so that basically there's a lot, but we need to do more to really get it off the ground. In the meantime, I'd like to hand over to Madhu Khanna from the University of Lima.
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for this opportunity to talk about the U.S. Policy and strategy for the bioeconomy. So the White House passed the executive order very recently, September 2022, that lays out a bold strategy for biotechnology and biomanufacturing. A major motivation for this has been the need to continue to maintain the U.S. leadership in the area of biotechnology and really put biomanufacturing as a central area of focus going forward, with the idea that to make sure that there are continue to be innovations in this area, and that not only are there innovations, but that it actually stimulates a domestic biomanufacturing industry in the U.S. There was a recent, or a few years back, a report by the National Academy of Sciences that actually put the value of the U.S. bioeconomy at about 5% of the GDP, with the expectation that, you know, this is going to grow into multi-trillion-dollar sector in the coming years. And so it's clearly something that is considered to be really important going forward. And so the strategy is aimed at trying to bring together in a comprehensive way the different agencies within the U.S., build some private and public partnerships to do that, and to move forward in a consistent way. Before kind of thinking about put the U.S. policy in context, it's sort of good to just step back. And we've heard different visions of the bioeconomy just this morning, and so there are really these three different visions that have a lot in common, but then they're also different. And the first is this vision of a bioeconomy, which is based on biotechnology at the core of it, and biotechnology as a way to improve economic development, economic growth, using that to produce new products and new ways to meet human needs. The second is the definition of bioeconomy that thinks of using biological resources as inputs. And so this is a way to replace fossil fuel with biological resources, and using biomass as a mechanism for getting there. The third is a bioecology vision, which is focused more on sustainability and this idea of a circular bioeconomy, which is using waste and from other sectors in the economy as a way to produce useful and valued products, and thereby not only replace fossil fuels, but to do that by reducing environmental harms, protecting biodiversity, and, you know, so it's more of the ecological perspective of the bioeconomy. there's a bit of disparity within, what particular vision there is, and multiple visions even within the US, and that are apparent in the way that this has been, written in various policy documents. The White House views the bioeconomy as a way to, based on biotechnology, biomanufacturing, to really get technological leadership and economic competitiveness. The National Academy of Sciences defines it as a way of using life sciences and, other information sciences and others as a way to promote biotechnology. The Congressional Research Service looks at it as more of the bioresource definition. And then philanthropic organizations like the Schmidt Futures views this as a circular bioeconomy, which is moving us away from this linear take, make, consume, throw approach to using waste as a way to produce valued products. And this is in some ways very different from the European vision of a bioeconomy, which is more centered around this idea of sustainability and having a circular economy at the heart of it. Now, across different federal agencies that have all been charged with producing their own visions and strategies for a bioeconomy, these different agencies have come up with their own goals and visions. The Department of Energy looks at the bioeconomy as a way to displace fossil fuels through very ambitious goals of finding alternatives, and also looking at biomass. And so using technology as a way to generate better plants, bioengineered plants, and produce 1 billion tons of biomass to displace 25% of the transportation fuel in the US, and provide resources to displace over half of the plastic-based products that are being produced with bio alternatives. And then looking at ways to reduce and remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The USDA looks at the bioeconomy as a way to promote greater productivity in agriculture, make it more climate smart, reduce food waste, reduce methane emissions, and so on. The Department of Commerce looks at it as a way to make our supply chains more resilient and more bio-based. So there are different visions that have actually now been kind of comprehensively combined into the national vision of what this bioeconomy will be, which has at its core really as a way to deal with climate change and to use the bioeconomy and focus it in ways that we can reduce the impacts of fossil fuels on the climate, both through different sectors, the food and agriculture sector, through improving the supply chain and moving away from fossil-based chemicals to biochemicals. There's also, of course, a huge health focus of trying to improve, biotechnology in order to provide better solutions for improving human health. And then there are many cross-cutting advances. But the idea of this is to use this $2 billion as part of this initiative to lower prices, lead to economic development, improve health outcomes, and reduce carbon emissions. The strategy for achieving this is really a fairly comprehensive strategy, all the way from promoting basic research, of which there is certainly a great deal that is needed and is already being undertaken, but also recognizing that we need to go beyond the basic research to actually having more commercialization and putting these technologies in practice, so that we continue to have biomanufacturing as the next phase of economic development and growth in the US. And so, there's the importance of sort of, building market opportunities for bioenergy and bio-based products. And really also thinking about the need for better data and for having mechanisms that we can use to measure the contributions of the bioeconomy and be able to track that and account for it. And the recognition that this is in fact going to require some new methods by which we have to classify the products that are being produced and how they're being accounted for in the GDP and so on. And then, of course, knowing that, the government cannot do it alone, but need to build private sector partnerships to do that, as well as international partnerships in order to achieve this vision. One of the other, accompanying charges is that to our Bureau of Economic Analysis, which has been charged with coming up with a national measure of the economic contributions of the bioeconomy. And here there's a challenge because in order to be able to measure, we have to have a consistent vision of what exactly and how we define a bioeconomy. And these three different visions can actually lead to different ways in which we might quantify the contributions of the bioeconomy. So some of the challenges that are currently being worked on are, being able to, if we use a biotechnology vision, is to be able to say, well, what products are being produced by new biotechnology innovations, what is already there, how to distinguish new from existing biotechnology standard practices. If we use the bioresources vision, then it could include the entire agriculture and forestry sector. And that is such a huge sector. And so that would mask any contributions by emerging biomanufacturing and so on. So that, we need to just look at that. And then if we use the bioecology vision, then it gets into this natural capital accounting as a mechanism for being able to quantify the natural capital and how the bioeconomy is contributing to enhancing the natural capital. So which products are included and how they're going to be quantified is something that is yet to be determined and still being worked on. In addition to the executive order by the White House, the Inflation Reduction Act actually provides a significant amount of funding that is that is being directed towards climate change mitigation. And a large part of that is through the bioeconomy. And so this is just an example of some of the areas and initiatives that have been slated for receiving significant funding over the next 5 to 10 years. To promote, sustainable aviation fuels, biomass production, as well as, it's very comprehensive, looking at climate smart agriculture and, reducing greenhouse gas emissions through carbon sequestration, and a number of different tax credits and incentives to move us really to make progress in going beyond the current first generation biofuels towards the next generation of biofuels. So I'm going to stop with that, and hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madhu, for this nice overview about what is going on in the United States. We have seen that there are a number of initiatives, and in particular the Inflation Reduction Act. That is something where Europeans looked very with a strong interest into, and raised also some suspicion on the European side. So that is definitely something that will be further discussed across the Atlantic Ocean. I'm quite sure about this. But now let's continue. I think we will move. Julius, he is now available. Okay, then. Hello, Julius. Nice to see you. Great.
Great to see you all. Very nice to connect. Sorry for the late connection. Thank you, Justus. Thank you, Justus, and members of the panel, and dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just share with you our journey towards the East African Bioeconomy Strategy, which we developed and was launched in December 2022. And now we are working towards its implementation. Just to give you a little context of East Africa, the region that I'm talking about. So those are the countries, the 8 countries in the map of Africa that is shaded green. Of course, with respect to Ethiopia, Ethiopia is not yet a member of the East African Community, but it did participate in preparing the regional strategy. And it is using this strategy also to develop its own national strategy. But what I want to mention in this slide is that most of the population in this region of Eastern Africa is rural. We have only about 30% in the urban areas. Of course, urbanization is also growing. And then, of course, we have a huge population of youth. So we started our journey towards the bioeconomy strategy, first by looking at some of the programs we were heading. Innovate Africa is a program that I lead in Eastern Africa that works in those 8 countries. So we had a problem of post-harvest losses. We lose about 40% of our produce in post-harvest. And then we also had the problem of converting biological waste into useful substances. So most of the agricultural residues or other, food waste was just, going into waste. And we thought that we could turn this into something useful. So because of that, we thought of, having a bioeconomy that would then drive these initiatives. And we also wanted to have a kind of strategy that would give us a direction, a clear direction of how to invest in bioeconomy. So we were inspired by a number of developments. First, in 2013, South Africa, the Republic of South Africa, had its first bioeconomy strategy, and it was the only country in the continent of Africa that had a specific bioeconomy strategy. And then in 2015 to 2017, a number of scientists, authors published this book and made a case for creating sustainable bioeconomies in Africa. And we also made a case for the need for a strategy. And then we attended the Global Bioeconomy Summit of 2018 in Berlin. That really inspired us, learning from what different countries were doing with respect to the strategy. And so we got inspiration from that Global Bioeconomy Summit. And then we began the process of developing our regional bioeconomy strategy in 2019. That was now published in 2022. So this strategy is implemented through the East African Science and Technology Commission, which is an agency of the East African community. But in East Africa, we think there is a strategic advantage for a bioeconomy strategy. If you look at this table, you will see what we consider to be the productive sectors of the economy. And this is where most of the investment is going. But you can see that agriculture still contributes the highest GDP for most of the countries in our region. And if you look in manufacturing is extremely low, and also because of low value addition. So we think that with the bioeconomy strategy, we can take advantage of the biological resources, the agricultural potential, and then boost some kind of manufacturing. And then of course that will also augment the services sector. And our strategy for East Africa, we were very fortunate that it is anchored on the African, what we call the African Union Agenda of 2063, which talks about sustainable growth, sustainable industrialization, issues of climate change, and smart jobs. Then we also have the SDGs 2030, which also inspired us to, and then of course we have the East African Vision 2050. Now all of these talk about the need for education, for scientific skills, for modernizing agriculture, conserving biodiversity, building climate resilience, social inclusion, economic growth, industrialization, and so on and so forth. So our bioeconomy strategy is very well anchored on these continental frameworks. The strategic pillars of our regional strategy, one, we have the sustainability pillars, where we look at environmental sustainability, climate change adaptation and mitigation, sustainable production and consumption. And then the middle box there is where our priority themes are. And this is where we are making the investments and interventions. So food security and sustainable agriculture is key for us. As I showed you, more than 30% of the GDP in this region is contributed by agriculture. And then we added health and well-being. Here we were inspired especially from experience of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, and the need to invest in public health and also great infrastructure for diagnostics, for vaccine development, and also using indigenous knowledge to develop therapeutics and so on and so forth. Then, of course, sustainable energy is key, and then biologically based industries is another one. For some of the activities, we can really lump our activities into these 4 ways, or 4 activities. One is really to improve primary production of commodities by farmers. But then the second one is adding value to that primary produce and other biological resources, and then creating market links for that. And then the third one is converting biological waste into something more useful and beneficial, so that waste becomes wealth in the end. And then, of course, biodiversity conservation is key, and ensuring that our ecosystems are resilient and we have regenerative potential for the biological resources. Now, as I come to a close, we have emerging opportunities. Now we have the regional conferences and policy dialogues happening through the East African community, of course, with us playing a key role in that as well. And then we also have the regional bioeconomy dialogues by this, what we call the Malabo Montpellier panel. They recently produced a book, Nature Solutions, which talks about policy innovations and opportunities for Africa's bioeconomy. Then we are also producing the State of the Bioeconomy in Eastern Africa report. We are going to do one for 2024. Every 2 years, we produce this report. And then, of course, we also have a number of projects now which are going on, purely bioeconomy projects. Some of these are listed in the last box there on value addition. But I think of great importance to us in this region is also looking at insect proteins for fish, for livestock, but also using the biofertilizer that comes from that. So just to conclude, with the East African Regional Bioeconomy Strategy is the first of its kind in Africa, and then the second after the EU Bioeconomy Strategy. We are now thinking of expanding this experience to other regions of Africa to also have their own strategies. And then maybe eventually we have one continental strategy. But already we are seeing that this strategy is helping us to align bioeconomy investments to regional development needs and priorities. It is also encouraging regional collaborations and global partnerships. And I'm very grateful to my colleagues, Justus and Hugo, for inviting me to be part of this conference. And I think, as you already see, we are thinking of building greater collaborations between Africa and also Latin America. So thank you very much, Justus, for again giving me the chance to be part of this panel.
Many thanks. And I'm happy that it in the end worked out seeing you via Zoom. It's a pity that you were not able to join us this year at the ICABR conference. We hope that we will see you next year Right. Now what we will do in the next two presentations, having a closer look at bioeconomy developments in the European Union. I will give a somewhat general overview, and then Regina Birner will talk about one of the leading countries with bioeconomy developments in the European Union, which is Germany. Now, when we look at the history of the bioeconomy strategy, how it has emerged in the European Union, then first of all is also linked with one important person, and that is Chris Pettermann. He is considered to be the father of the European Union bioeconomy. He was working for the German ministry for a while, and then he moved to Brussels, and he started to develop what is known as a knowledge-based bioeconomy, and Eduardo Trigo was already referring to this in his talk. And there were some important papers that came out of the knowledge-based bioeconomy activities. And one of the most important papers was published in 2006 on route to the knowledge-based bioeconomy, which basically laid out the strategic plan for the European Union, in particular also with allocating funding for further developments. Then we had in 2015 the first Global Bioeconomy Summit, which was held in Germany. In 2020, another big important step has been implemented at EU level, and that is with respect to the what is called the taxonomy, that is identifying investment activities that are contributing to a sustainable development. In 2012, we had the publication of the first bioeconomy strategy, which was stressing the efficient use of renewable resources with a focus on research and investments. And then in 2018, there was an update, and then the Green Deal with the von der Leyen Commission was introduced in the European Union, which more strongly emphasized the development of the bioeconomy. And then 2022, we observed a bioeconomy progress report, and that further developed then specific measures and objectives to be reached. So as I mentioned, the EU bioeconomy strategy is part of the European Green Deal. And the Green Deal is basically a roadmap for making EU's economy sustainable. And the bioeconomy there plays a very important role. And as part of the Green Deal, about 1 billion have been allocated for projects that respond to climate crisis, ecosystem, and biodiversity challenges in the European Union. And basically, this is money that would fall under the bioeconomy supported strategy of the European Union. Now, there are always questions about how is a bioeconomy defined. Now, in the European Union, the definition is this is a conversion of biological resources. Now, that is in a nutshell, but there has been a little bit more nuanced differentiation in the definition. So that on the left-hand side, you can see the one that was used in 2012, which where they say it encompasses production of renewable biological resources and their conversion into food, feed, bio-based products, and bioenergy. Now, in 2018, it became a little bit broader. It includes all sectors and systems that rely on biological resources and their functions and principles. So it did go beyond just looking at it from the production side, but more having a systematic view on the bioeconomy since then. And when we look at it from a sectorial perspective, that basically it has become broader. It not only includes the primary sectors, but also other sectors of the economy, and in particular also service sector, for example, and the knowledge sector has also been identified as very instrumental and important for the bioeconomy. Now, the EU has 5 societal challenges that should be addressed with the bioeconomy, and this is ensuring food and nutrition security, managing natural resources sustainably, reducing dependence on non-renewable, unsustainable resources, whether sourced domestically or from abroad, mitigating and adapting to climate change, and strengthening European competitiveness and creating jobs. So these are the 5 main challenges faced. And then the action areas are strengthening and scaling up bio-based sectors, and to unlock investments and markets, deploy local bioeconomies more rapidly across the European Union, and understand the ecological boundaries of the bioeconomy. And for this, there have been a number of initiatives launched by the European Union. For example, one of the initiatives that is widely discussed is the farm to fork strategy. Now, one of the challenges, and is if you have all this, is what the European Union doing, contributing to what they want to achieve. This is a non-trivial task. And we were heading an EU project which is called Biomonitor, with the task to identify how the development of the bioeconomy could be monitored and measured. And I will show you here one of the results, how we can look at this. And that is results that are from the implementation of a general equilibrium model, which is so far that model that we used is the most detailed one that is currently available at EU level. It's still not detailed enough according to our liking, but that is basically the best that we can get at this point in time, and it includes all the different resources. And what we did was in the project identifying some of the sectors where innovations took place and included them explicitly in our model. And these are the introduction of new biochemical activities in pharmaceuticals, in bioplastics, and in the general biochemical industry, to see what may happen then with respect to the bioeconomy in the European Union. This is just a snapshot on some of the most advanced developments in the bioeconomy. It doesn't capture all the activities that were going on. For example, the links with the farm to fork strategy or other were not part of this economic modeling exercise. So that is what someone has to bear in mind. Still, it provides us some insights about what may happen. And with this modeling exercise, we can identify to what extent different sectors in the bioeconomy are affected. For example, if we look at the turnover, whether or not they are increasing or decreasing. And what you can see, for example, in the bioeconomy sector from 2020 to 2050, we see there a substantial increase in the turnover of the bioeconomy. When we look, for example, at the forestry sector, we see a slight increase as well in the bio-based chemicals. We see a biofuel liquids turnover goes down, by the biofuel solids turnover substantially increases. And we can do then other studies or simulation studies, and looking at the employment trends, for example. Job creation plays a very important role. To what extent more jobs have been created. We can look at the land use trends. We can identify what might be the emission trends, and what we then observe, at least with this modeling exercises, that the emission trends are going down. And what you can see here from 2020, which basically is the baseline, then down to 2050, we observe a decline in emissions with a switch to these biochemical sectors. And we can also then look at the land footprint, how this will be affected if we move more into the chemical sector as a substitution to fossil fuel-based chemical products. And well, there's a slight decline. We were a little bit surprised. We expected that the decline would be more pronounced, but doesn't seem to be the case. And the emission footprint is also relatively slow. And then what you can do, and that was an interesting exercise that we did with this model, linking this with the challenges of the European bioeconomy strategy, and to what extent this may have a positive or negative effect. And what we did in the exercise then is okay, we have a baseline without having any further implementations on greenhouse gas emissions, or then we have a reduction in fossil fuel by 30%, reduction in fossil fuel by 50%. And you can think about this introducing, for example, a tax on fossil fuels that reduces them to 30% use or reduces them down to 50% use. And the question for us was to what extent this may have an effect on the specific challenges that the European Union would like to achieve. And when we look at the results, in many cases, it's almost all red. That is how the situation at this point in time is. When we look at land use prices, forestry, roundwood production, and non-food biomass feedstock production. So these are the indicators that have been identified to be linked with these challenges. We observe a positive effect on biological renewable energy production that is increasing. On other indicators, again, there is a negative effect to be observed. Mitigating, adapting to climate change. Yes, this is positive. So if we have this switch, there we see some positive results. And then strengthening European competitiveness and creating jobs. Using the indicators suggested, for some it looks positive, while for others we observe a negative effect. So with these modeling exercises, we have done the first step to be able to link the developments in the bioeconomy with the objectives of the European Union. For the current developments we observe in the chemical sector, which got strong support from the European Commission, we so far at this point in time cannot conclude that this will result in a substantial positive change. This at this point in time. So basically, again, what has been stressed by many before, I think more needs to be done if this should be used as a pathway to achieve what the European Union wants to gain with their bioeconomy strategy. So with this, I like to finish my presentation and hand over to Regina Birner. She may have a somewhat more positive lesson from Germany.
Well, thank you, especially also for the kind invitation to talk about Germany. It is a bit challenging after all the interesting things that have been said. I'm not sure I'll be able to keep you still awake. And maybe I may even spoil the story even more than Justus did. Why? Maybe you have, some of you may have read in this respected journal, Ecological Economics, published this year, a paper entitled "The Bioeconomy in Germany, a Failing Project?" ? So what I would like to do is first look back of the role of Germany in establishing the bioeconomy as a global concept. I would like to reflect on the question, which narratives dominate the bioeconomy today? And that links directly to the question of political economy that our keynote speaker in the morning raised. And then I would like to have some reflections on what is the way forward. We already have seen in Justus' presentation that Germans, starting with Christian Partermann, actually played an important role in pushing the bioeconomy to start even to use the term. There was the so-called Cologne paper named after a conference in the German city of Cologne that established these two pillars of the bioeconomy that you also raised, bioresources on the one hand, biotechnology on the other. Later we had the sustainability or ecology perspective added. National bioeconomy research strategy already in 2010 in Germany, followed by strategies in many other countries. Germans, especially Joachim von Braun and Christine Lang, then the heads of the German Bioeconomy Council, played, I would say, a leading role in encouraging others to all come together in the International Advisory Council on Global Bioeconomy And also as an outcome of this dedicated efforts, we had global bioeconomy summits in Berlin in 2015, 2018, and the last one virtual because it was already Corona in 2020. Yeah, here's another summary. We had these bioeconomy councils, we had the strategy, we had a national policy in 2013. That was led by the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And it actually had a very strong focus on this bioresources perspective that Madhu has actually pointed out. So biotechnology was always a bit more on the sideline, also in the European Union, as Justus said. And big difference to the US, pharmacy was actually never considered to be part of the bioeconomy in spite of the important biotechnological applications in this economic sector. In higher education, we have also seen important developments under the leadership of my colleague at the University of Hohenheim, Professor Iris Lewandowski. We established the first bioeconomy master in 2014, and Iris was also very influential in creating the European Bioeconomy University, so a lot of effort also in higher education. And what happened then during the Corona crisis, this is the front page of Der Spiegel. This is a weekly, very widely read magazine. Yeah, we see, they say, BioNTech Heilsbringer, that's a German word for the saviors. Yeah, so the saviors, the founders of this BioNTech company, yeah, who developed the first vaccine, as you all know, on mRNA basis, but that was not recognized as part of the bioeconomy. And in this article, the two founders also described how difficult it actually is, how difficult it was in the German environment to even develop this vaccine. It was very difficult for them to get finance. They could convince two billionaires to give them money that actually helped them. And they didn't go to the stock exchange in Germany, as many other biotech companies. They don't go to Germany to the stock exchange. They actually go to NASDAQ. What happened then? In 2020, the second Bioeconomy Council was a bit unexpectedly dissolved. A new national research strategy and bioeconomy strategy was actually developed together by two ministries now, environment, not environment, it was agriculture and also science and education. And then in 2021, a third round of the Bioeconomy Council actually started to work in a completely new composition. Apart from myself, there's actually only one former member who was also in the second council who is there. And what is different now? The Federal Ministry of the Environment, Nature Protection, Nuclear Safety, and Consumer Protection also nominated members to the council, which in principle was a very welcome idea, so that all perspectives, also the bioecology perspective that you also raised, were represented there. So in principle, a good thing. But what happened then is that all the discussion there became very controversial. And the council is actually working. We presented recommendations to implement the national bioeconomy strategy to two ministries. Here you see the heads, the chairs of the current Bioeconomy Council, Iris Lewandowski, she's on the left in the upper picture, and Daniela Tran on the right-hand side. And they hand over these recommendations to the state secretaries. But there were a lot of controversies. In the end, only the summary actually of these recommendations were published because everything was seen to be too controversial to really be put out there. And I think one can use this nice book by science author Charles Mann to describe what narratives are actually prominent in the debate on bioeconomy in Germany today. Charles Mann describes two paradigms by tracing them back to two prominent figures. And one is the wizards. So the wizards are those who believe in innovation. And the figure he traces this paradigm back to is Norman Borlaug, probably known to many of you, father of the Green Revolution. And the other ones are the prophets. So prophets are people who warn society against potential negative things that can actually happen. Yeah, so the prophets, and he traces the prophets back to William Vogt, an early leader of the environmental movement, wrote this book, Road to Survival. Yeah, so the motto of the prophets is you have to cut back. Yeah, the paradigm of degrowth is very strongly associated today with this view. And on the wizard side, we have this motto, you have to innovate, because only if we innovate, everyone can win. And these two paradigms, you may observe them in many different debates. In Germany, we now also observe it in the bioeconomy debate. So the wizard's position may be shared by many of you, and I think strongly reflected in the nice presentations we have seen before, is the bioeconomy offers unique opportunities. Yeah, in biotechnology, in bioresources, also in the bioecology field. And innovations, in particular, biotechnological innovations, they are actually important. They will help us to reach sustainability. And the goal is to encourage innovation and remove barriers to their adoption. So that's the wizard's view. But we also have the prophet's position. And the prophet's position says bioeconomy is a potentially dangerous development. Yeah, because biomass production competes with food security. That is a very prominent argument. Innovations are inherently risky. Also genome editing. I was listening to the German radio this morning. There was a debate on the European Union, which will today announce their new plans on the regulation of genome editing. Yeah, and leading members, both of the Green Party and the Social Democrat Party, went on record before it was even published to warn against prophet's position, to warn against the potential dangers of regulating this differently than before. And there's also frequent reference to the rebound effect of innovations. And therefore, there's often the general view that even if they are not dangerous, at least they're ineffective. So the goal is to prevent the negative effects of the bioeconomy. So in principle, I strongly believe in having checks and balances. So I do believe we need both positions. But my own observation is that the prophet's narrative has actually become quite prominent and may actually hold societies back from realizing the innovation potential that does exist. And we see that also, coming to an end now, we see this also in a literature review, very interesting literature review, where Hannah Gold and others try to find out what are the most quoted papers. And they found that the globally most cited paper, it's actually an interesting paper on the role of biomass and bioenergy. Yeah, and the overview says, the authors point to the competition between biomass and other uses, and they warn, here you have the prophets, they warn against increasing demand and the negative implications and so on. Yeah, so as I said, I think it's important to have these checks and balances, but the prophet's narrative seems to have become rather dominant. This is another interesting paper where, based on a survey of German consumers, the authors tried to cluster the opinions between two dimensions. One is degrowth and growth, and the other dimension is technological skepticism and technological optimism. And yeah, we do have the range of all possible combinations in society, but there's a strong cluster, which is what they call the eco-social camp. Yeah, and the other camps may be less represented. What these authors actually conclude is that these issues surrounding the bioeconomy are even more contested among the population than they are in society. And that may actually lead to social conflicts. And they say the core challenge is to establish ecologically sustainable and socially just transformation pathways in participatory and democratic ways. What we also see, and now we come maybe to the more positive side, is what is happening on the ground. Because on the ground, actually, very interesting initiatives are moving forward. This is so-called Bioeconomy Revier. This is a former coal mining area. And because of Germany is phasing out coal, this region has decided we will actually use bioeconomy as a new opportunity also to create workplaces and so on. And a lot is actually happening here. And the Bioeconomy Council also did an overview what is actually happening in the German states, more at the local level. It's unfortunately right now still only in German, but there's a stock taking in each state. There are many initiatives, many things are actually going on. So that is actually the positive message. So the way forward, I think it's important that these local initiatives are made more visible. And I think it's also important to develop what political scientists like Emery Rowe call a meta-narrative. Yeah, a narrative that takes into account both the concerns and the opportunities of the prophets and the wizards, yeah, and finds a middle ground, yeah, that is, however, based on scientific evidence and also especially attractive to young people. And we also believe that having another global bioeconomy summit, hopefully next year, may actually help to bring the different camps together and move forward. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, Regina, thanks a lot showing us what's going on in Germany and linking this with the different narratives, the prophets and the wizards. Quite influential book looking at how debates are framed. And one of the questions I'd like to raise to the panel, and that is based on my discussions I have with European Commission and other stakeholders. Hi, Julius. Good.
Hi, yeah.
And they miss at a certain level evidence of the success of the bioeconomy. They say, okay, it's a NATO trap, right? No action, talk only. How would you respond to that? Is this something based in your regions that you have presented that is something, well, we talk a lot about this, we have prophecies, we have the wizards, but really on the ground, not so much is happening. So they miss basically, in particular at European level, to have evidence that the bioeconomy strategy is providing something positive with respect, let's phrase this, overall sustainable development, but in particular, they're looking for products. They want to see something, okay, here is a nice bioeconomy related product, zero emissions, etc., etc. Respond to that, Dalia.
Voy a tratar de responder en base a la experiencia que tenemos en Argentina, por supuesto. Nosotros entendemos que esta estrategia y en base a las acciones que estamos desarrollando tiene mucho potencial, pero que también actualmente estamos viendo productos y procesos vinculados a la bioeconomía que ya que son una realidad. Yo les comenté los del sello bioproducto, ahí tenemos muchas empresas, especialmente pequeñas y medianas empresas que hacen desarrollos. En mi charla no comenté, porque en 10 minutos no podía contarle todo lo que hicimos en 3 años y medio, pero habíamos hecho unas mesas, se llamaban mesas de innovación en bioeconomía, y convocábamos a sectores específicos. Por ejemplo, hicimos una del sector lácteo. Entonces, otro del sector vitivinícola, bueno. Y entonces ahí hablaban quienes producían, quienes estaban en la parte productiva del sector lácteo, pero también quienes necesitaban y usaban como insumo lo que para el sector lácteo era un desperdicio o una contaminación, como el suero lácteo, por ejemplo. Y Y bueno, y ahí se encontraban, como decíamos, el novio con la novia, ¿no es cierto? O sea, quien tenía algo que generaba contaminación y quien lo necesitaba como insumo para una producción, ¿sí? En este caso, una empresa de biopinturas, por ejemplo. Y así tenemos varios ejemplos en donde sin estar dentro de lo clásico que en nuestro país es la soja y el maíz, ¿no? En general, en las grandes producciones. En otro tipo de producciones encontrábamos ejemplos de productos y subproductos o residuos que terminaban siendo insumos de otro desarrollo.
Thank you. Hugo, you want to add brief?
Gracias, Justus. Sí, desde el punto de vista de América Latina, yo creo que tenemos dos situaciones. Una, en grandes realidades de negocios de la bioeconomía ya en escala y funcionando en países que fueron precursores y hoy son líderes, principalmente aplicaciones biotecnológicas y biocombustibles. Muy centralizado en Argentina, en Brasil, en Paraguay, en Colombia, particularmente, digamos, en esos países. Y además hay otros nuevos negocios de la bioeconomía en donde hoy lo que tenemos son casos que demuestran que es posible y que hay evidencia de que es rentable, de que suman a sostenibilidad, pero son todavía casos. ¿Qué es lo que quisiéramos? Que dejen de ser casos y sean generalidades en donde sucedan, digamos, a lo largo y ancho y que además incorporen a los pequeños y que además tengan, pero hoy, por ejemplo, para temas en donde tenemos mucha esperanza, como por ejemplo biorefinerías de residuos, hoy tenemos casos pequeños, casos puntuales, que generan evidencia y que demuestran que tienen altos impactos. Pero todavía nos falta, como decía yo, meter acelerador para que eso pueda ser multiplicable en los países de la región.
So I guess in the US, we've had the biggest successes really have been in expansion of biofuels from first generation crops. From food crops, there's been an exponential growth. The challenge is moving beyond that to second generation and biomass production. And there is, a lot of research and development that's going on. But a major challenge that has been noted in the case of the US is that there's huge amounts of investment by the NSF and the agencies in basic science and not enough in really taking that to commercialization. So how do we overcome that challenge is sort of the issue, and getting investment that's needed in order to really move forward with the sustainable aviation fuels and all of that at the scale that is being envisioned and produce that 1 billion ton of biomass. How do we overcome that is the issue. And there we run into very similar issues about public perception being very negative relative to what the science and technology people would suggest.
Julius, do you face this in Africa? No action talk, only that people say, right, show us evidence.
Yeah, thank you. I think here, yes, the same challenge is there. So what we try to do is demonstrate bioeconomy in real life. So for instance, the program that I lead is called Bioinnovate Africa, and our mission really is to connect university scientists and private companies to develop bio-based products. And one thing that underpins our bioeconomy strategy is science and innovation taken together. So through this, we are demonstrating actual projects on the ground. And I think, Justus, you mentioned earlier about the different definitions of bioeconomy. So we have found that the best way to describe bioeconomy is to use examples and use it in context. So for instance, I'll share with you just one briefly. We are now using the black soldier fly, which is a fly found in our ecosystems. And we are using this fly to decompose waste, biological waste, and then to produce larvae which we use as a protein supplement for chicken, for pork, for fish, and so on and so forth. But also we produce fertilizer, which is really good for the agricultural practitioners. So, and now we've taken this to market, and it's gaining a lot of traction. Small scale farmers, some investors in the industry are putting in money in this. So this is how we try to demonstrate that actually bioeconomy is a reality, and there is a little bit of work that is going on, but definitely in this part of the hemisphere, this part of the world, we still need a lot of investment to take it to scale.
Thank you, Julius. David, you have raised your hand.
I like this session, but I feel that it is a problem. When we started this consortium speaking about the bioeconomy, we had an academic definition. It wasn't bureaucratic, and it was very inclusive. The bioeconomy includes using biological technologies to utilize natural resources, and it includes biotech, biofuel, payment for ecosystem. It was very, very inclusive. Now, the reality is different. In some countries in Europe, they don't want GMO. It's okay. In some countries, they want some other thing. But to me, we have to distinguish between the definition of the bioeconomy as a concept, which basically try to move from non-renewable economy to renewable economy, using all the technologies possible to all the constraints that we have in different countries. Now, if I look at the US, I think the US has a huge success in the bioeconomy, and it has nothing to do with, first of all, we have biotech in agriculture, which is which is quite successful. If it wasn't for the biotech in agriculture, we wouldn't have biofuel because we wouldn't have sufficient corn and soybean. Secondly, we have an incredible, all over the world, movement towards biotech or modern biotechnology-based medical sector. We have bioplastic, and we also have more movement to payment for ecosystem services. So we have to move away from looking at what policymakers think biotechnology is, because generally policymakers have to look at constituency, and a lot of them are very narrow in their perspective, and look what is our vision and see what's going on there. So if we look at the global picture, there is a vision and there is a reality. And the reality is that in different countries you have different types of things because of compromises. But the basic vision, at least for me, that was the key for the ICABR, is to move to an economy that rely on biological processes, biological knowledge and natural resources in order to address issues of sustainability, climate change, etc. So as scientists, we have to think less about SDGs and what every government does, to think about concepts and then to look how reality affected. And I think the moment that we don't do it, we basically reduce our dream, and our ability to be critical is limited. I think that the European bioeconomy is failure. They will be behind China in years to come. I think that if the US, we continue to be afraid of our shadow, we wouldn't be able to stop climate change. We have to use all the capacity that we have in a reasonable manner, and we have to have policies and finance and other things that will support to moving forward. But if we look at what we have as a definition of what should be, nothing will change.
Yes. Okay. That was more a comment than a question. Okay. Any other questions from the audience? Here, okay.
From my side, really interesting. We had a long discussion on Monday also about bioinput. Marnix Doorn from German collaboration here in Argentina. But from what there is a lot of discussion about theoretical frameworks, and I think what Dr. Birner showed is, shouldn't we think about, and that's also the comments what Julius said, go and do things instead of discussing too much. And I think there are two examples, and Dalia didn't even mention them. And for me, being here since a year, it's a surprise. What Argentina has done in primary agriculture production with their no-tilling, they have a maize sector that has the lowest CO2 output in the world. Why aren't we discussing? Because it's a live case. So I think there are a lot of positive things actually happening, and we make the scenario maybe a little bit too dark, since we forget that at grassroots, I wouldn't say that Argentina is grassroots, but basically one of the biggest agriculture producers in the world is really advanced. And I think we should study and show it and think about how we can replicate what's done. And you have probably 1,000 examples. So maybe that's the challenge. Let's see what's been done, how we can replicate it and have direct impact. And then the policies will follow.
Okay, so that I also see more as a comment, but there's another question here.
I'm coming.
Okay, hold your question back. Sorry, what does the panel think about the comments by David and by the other colleague?
Okay, I feel more comfortable speaking in Spanish than I'm going to speak in Spanish. Tengo 4 reflexiones para mencionar. Okay. La primera es sobre la red latinoamericana de bioeconomía. Me parece que es un punto muy importante de lo que ha pasado en esta conferencia. El segundo es sobre la biodiversidad en East Africa Bioeconomy. Me llamó la atención que solo aparece como en la lista de actividades. No la veo como un eje central y quisiera un poco de ampliación. El tercero, y no es para comparar, sino para tomar un caso específico, el caso de USA, donde hay 2 aspectos que están presentes a lo largo de toda la exposición, contribution y budgets. Siempre nos hablan de cuál es la contribución y cuál es el presupuesto que se le asigna. Y personalmente veo eso como un buen ejemplo para tomar en cuenta, porque sobre todo en Latinoamérica, poco hablamos de para qué y poco hablamos de con qué. Creo que son 2 aspectos a tomar en cuenta porque hay mucho pragmatismo en esto y me parece muy positivo. Y el cuarto punto sobre el Wizards y the Prophet, lo que yo considero es que en este momento la bioeconomía no se puede ver en abstracto, hay que verla como parte del modelo de desarrollo. Ya nos lo decía esta mañana el doctor Trigo. Y considero que lo que hay que analizar es cuál es el modelo de desarrollo en el que cada país se ubica y en el que plantea la bioeconomía jugando un papel importante. Gracias.
Okay.
Yeah, first, I couldn't agree more with the quest to see what is actually going on locally, because that was actually also one of my points. It's also one of our main fields of research to look at local initiatives, what is actually going on. And there are numerous examples. For example, in Germany, this bioenergy villages. There was an original idea from academics that a whole village should be based on bioenergy, and everybody was saying, oh, this will never work, you know, and then these villages, they sprung up everywhere. They became a movement. Yeah, and I think the same is happening with bioeconomy. I was mentioning the example in this other occasion. It was a cooperative in Costa Rica that was the world's first. The farmers in the mountains of Costa Rica who got their value chain by an international standard certified as carbon neutral, where the scientists were still debating, is this possible or not? And the farmers and their cooperatives, they just did it. Yeah. So I think these local initiatives are very important, and to give them more visibility, to also facilitate that they can actually create networks and become a movement. I think that is really the way to go.
So, yeah, completely agree with what David said in that, definitions are not, we don't need to be constrained by definitions. And we can define it the way we see it as academics, more broadly. I guess the point, though, is that we can certainly do that, and we should, but we really want to think about how are we going to move from where we are today as an economy and move towards this bioeconomy, defined very broadly. There's a critical role for policy in doing that. And and that kind of is why it's important to look at what is really guiding that policy and to what extent that policy is being implemented, and this rhetoric about bioeconomy, how does it translate into what is the policy on the ground that's going to move us towards that? And I think that's where it's important to look at what exactly is the policy. And if we look at what the current policies are, just looking, for example, at biofuel, this is sort of one part of the bioeconomy, the policy is really way behind what some of these lofty goals are. And you know, it's very much influenced by the high cost of moving towards a bioeconomy, so that even though you know, people recognize that we need to do it, but the cost is very prohibitive. And so what are the policy incentives that are going to lead to that, I think is a big question, no matter how we want to define it. And so I think that's sort of where the government strategy and policy is important.
Hugo, and then I give finally the word.
Gracias. Una reacción a los 3 o 4 comentarios. Efectivamente, yo creo que tenemos muchos casos que ya hoy demuestran evidencia sobre la parte económica, sobre la parte social, sobre la parte ambiental. Como decía, yo creo que tenemos más casos en la parte de biocombustibles, en la parte de aplicaciones biotecnológicas, en la parte de agricultura de bajo carbono y algunos, bueno, y en servicios ecosistémicos. Y otros menos casos en otros negocios, digamos, de mayor prospectiva, digamos, en temas de bioeconomía, particularmente estos temas de biorefinerías de residuos, etcétera, ¿no? Pero a nuestro juicio siguen siendo casos. Es decir, eso todavía no nos alcanza si realmente queremos apostar a la bioeconomía como modelo de desarrollo. No, si realmente queremos, hoy tenemos prácticas bioeconómicas en terreno, sin duda, y ya hay evidencia de que generan altos impactos. Pero para que América Latina le pueda apostar a la bioeconomía como modelo de desarrollo, como digamos en Europa apostó o sigue apostando en algún momento, todavía nos falta. Y por eso es que, y ahí saco lo de la Red Latinoamericana de Bioeconomía, muchos de estos esfuerzos son compartidos. No, muchos de estos esfuerzos van más allá de lo agrícola, son multisectoriales, son multipaís, son multitemáticos, y eso nos obliga a trabajar de manera conjunta. Y por eso fue que nace esta iniciativa de unir a los actores en América Latina que estamos trabajando en los mismos temas y hay gran capacidad de complementar.
Julius, you want to respond?
Yes,
briefly?
Yes, I would. Yeah, briefly, so I agree with the gentleman, and I think there was somebody who mentioned something about East Africa. Sorry, I didn't understand because I don't speak Spanish. But maybe Hugo can help me to address that question if it was directed to me. But I agree with the two gentlemen. I think, you know, in one of our consultations leading to the strategy, we invited the Minister of Agriculture in one of the countries. And he asked us, you know, what are you people talking bioeconomy? We have been doing bioeconomy since time immemorial. So what is new about what you're proposing? So then it calls into question the need to look at those local initiatives, local examples, and benchmark them with what we call, you know, bioeconomy. In our case, value addition is critical. The use of scientific knowledge is critical. It has to be sustainable, and so on and so forth. And that is why we put a high premium on indigenous knowledge, because there's a lot of knowledge that is happening. I think somebody mentioned the no-tilling farming systems in Argentina, and these are critical, and we need to benchmark them and bring them into the bioeconomy that we are talking about.